Basically, I spent a lot of time. I spent several thousand rubles on all sorts of chemical cleaners, but I did manage to clean it. So, I'm installing the oil seals. What is an oil seal? It consists of two parts. This part is pressed tightly onto the shaft, and the oil seal itself fits over here, passing over this lip. And basically the point is that they should be at a certain distance from each other. So if the oil seal is set too high, it will leak, and if you set it lower, it will also leak. So the sealing happens exactly because of this flange, and this lip rests on this surface. So the sealing doesn't happen here like with a regular classic oil seal, but along this surface. If we look at the old oil seal, I've got another engine like this being repaired just from a truck, from a vehicle. We can see the shine is exactly on this lip. Here it is. There's also contact here, there's also sealing here, but the main sealing happens right at this lip. And here, there are also these oil scraping features. Oil scraping, the thread is cut like this. So this seal is installed with a special tool, a tool of this kind. So this depth is strictly set to 17.3. That's from this surface to this surface here. This ring sits against here like this, and this part will rest against the crankshaft itself. There. And it will be from this surface. Look, from this surface it's 17.3 millimeters, and we have a tolerance of plus or minus 0.3. So roughly speaking, from 17 to 17.6. And then, first this ring is pressed in, as I already mentioned, to a certain depth. And then, using the same tool, the seal itself is pressed in, but you need to put a washer in this spot. A certain thickness, 7 or 7/8 I think. I don't remember the thickness right now. I'll tell you a bit later. That's it. And also tighten it all the way until this washer, which will be placed here, rests against the crankshaft, and then will maintain this dimension. Well, the proper position of one part of the oil seal relative to the other, so to speak. So I'm installing the rear oil seal. Then, in the same way, I'll install the front oil seal. After that, I'll close the oil pan. Maybe I'll install the flywheel right away here. Well, basically I'll finish putting the rest together here, then I'll turn it over and start installing the cylinder head. I also want to mention that this gear, specifically on this engine, doesn't play any role, meaning nothing is driven by it, nothing turns from it. It's just installed here because it has to be so that oil doesn't splash around, but otherwise it's running idle. On this side we have a plug, while on other models some additional part is installed here. Equipment, a compressor. I think a compressor is installed here, but on this engine there is no compressor. And here a plug is installed, this kind of plug. I've already prepared it as well. There's a new rubber seal installed here, bolts. And it's simply installed like this, and that's it. I'll also install this plug right away, and this gear is covered by another plug. I've already installed a new rubber seal here as well, just like this. So now I'll install the oil seal, install these plugs, install the flywheel, install the oil pan, and then I'll turn the engine over and start installing the cylinder head. Alright, so I've installed the washer and this ring, and now I'll take the measurements. You can't measure from this surface here because there's a recess in the ring at this spot. So we'll place the square like this. It has a thickness of 40 min. Well, basically give or take 40. 40 min added, we should have 17.3 plus 40. That's 57.3. Well, 57.3. 57.2. 57.3. Well, give or take, you can't really catch the exact tenths here. Plus, there's always a margin of error in the measurement anyway. Well, basically give or take 1/10. We don't take that into account. The ring is installed properly using a special tool, not hammered in with a nail, a cylinder liner or some piece of wood. So, now I'm going to install the oil seal according to the manual from this surface. The one where the flywheel is mounted, the rings are set at 17.3. And from this surface to the oil seal, it's 7.8. So, the difference between the measurements is 9.5 mm. And there's this kind of spacer. Well, not exactly a washer, but basically a spacer like this. Here, the guide is sized so that it fits tightly into the crankshaft like this. Here we have a height of 9.45, give or take 1/100th of a millimeter. So I install this spacer here, and then we use this tool to press it in. When it stops like this, that means the seal is in place. Here, you definitely need to apply oil, unlike the springless Teflon seals. Here, you must oil the seating area, the ring itself, but I'll also put a little oil here so the seal goes in more smoothly. So let's take some measurements. Well, also plus 40 mm. It should be about 7.8 mm, give or take. We have the same 3/10 of a margin. So basically everything fits within these measurements. Well, 47.9 mm. 48 mm, give or take 1/10. It probably can't get any more precise because it's not metal, not a hard material, but rubber on the edge of the seal, so it can deform in places and so on. So I checked the tightness of this bolt. There's some play in the gear, everything's fine. The rubber here, as I showed, is new. I applied sealant, now I'm installing it. So I installed the fly. We just ran the bolts in with the impact wrench without tightening them. So we tighten to 80 Newton meters and then turn it further by 120 to 150 degrees.
Subtitles. Thank you for
So I'm installing the heat exchanger. I showed the new gaskets under the radiator. Here is the oil channel seal, also a new gasket, and in this place there's also a new gasket. It comes with a metal washer, so it won't get crushed or cocked in that welded in metal washer. Alright, the heat exchanger is ready. The threads here are degreased and checked. I applied sealant and we have grooves here. There's a groove all around the perimeter. It gets filled with sealant. I applied sealant to this groove and a little more on top. So I'm installing it. There's an outlet right here. I tighten it at this spot. Well, I don't know, maybe I'll install the fuel injection equipment right away and then I'll turn the engine over and put it in the working position. Alright, so I've set the engine in its working position and now I'm going to install the cylinder head. So I wiped it down on top here. There was some oil here. Well, basically I degreased it. Then I checked the piston protrusion above the cylinder block again. I'll show it on camera now and then I'll install the head. Finally, this is how my engine looks right now. I'm already installing some parts. I've installed some and there are still some things left to install. This coupling here is the old one. I just put it in place for now. I haven't fully seated it on the guides yet, just so it's in position. So I'm installing the cylinder head, then the camshaft, adjusting the valves, closing the cover, and I installed the starter. But to should note I cleaned it, started to blow it out, and black stuff just keeps coming out of it. So I unscrewed these bolts here. That's 4 bolts. I open it up, I took off this cover, and inside everything is just so dirty, all grime, dust. Basically everything is just covered in it. I washed everything there several times with solvent. Well, with a degrazer, blew it out, put this cover back in place. Well, the gasket, there was no starter, and the customer said not to repair the starter because it would be expensive. If there's a problem, he'll just buy a new starter instead. Well, that's all up to the customer. In general, I did what I could, cleaned it up a bit there. So we can also see that there should be oil filters installed here, but we see that there's only the housing and no filter. That is, there are 2 fittings like this coming out, and apparently hoses are connected here, and then it goes somewhere. In general, the filter is not installed directly on the engine. So I installed the fuel pump. We took the pump to the fuel specialists. They checked it and said it might need repairs, but the customer said it wasn't necessary. Repairs need to be done, but let everything stay as it is. Also, the fuel specialist said that the injectors are not even from this engine at all. I don't know how they ended up here or who installed them, but I'll leave everything as it was. The customer said nothing needs to be done with the fuel system. That's it. And in general, I don't remember if I mentioned it or not, but from my last conversation with the customer, he said, spend at least an hour or an hour and a half a day on my engine, not just 10 or 15 minutes. I mean, I don't know if he's joking or if that's really his attitude and understanding of this whole process. I mean, he devalues my work so much that he thinks I only spend 10 or 15 minutes a day working on his engine. I mean, well, I already said that his engine is being worked on out of turn. He thinks I'm doing other work, and just in between I spend 10 or 15 minutes a day on his engine. I don't know. That's the attitude. The customer's attitude. He devalues my work so much, even though I've been working on this engine for almost 2 weeks now. Well, since the moment the block arrived from the machine work at Chiro, I've been working on it every day without a break, from morning till evening. And really, for every engine, I give it my all. I put a piece of my soul into it. And then to get this kind of attitude from the customer, I mean, I don't know, I have no words. Alright, so that's it. I'm starting to install the cylinder head, and then, as I said before, I'll continue from there. And I also want to show how this cover is machined, the block with the cover. I mean, the rear housing, that's what I mean. I installed it while it's sitting in the guides. Obviously, everything has to be perfect, so I installed it. And we can see here, well, you can't even feel any difference. It's like it's all one piece. You can see there's not even a step. No gap at all, not even 100 of a millimeter. Well, I don't know how well you can see it on camera. That is, everything is done perfectly. And also each cylinder liner, how it fits. Well, I mean, I don't know, everything is just done perfectly, just at the factory level, if not better. So, the first cylinder, block 0. (46) 46. Well, and now the 4th cylinder. We also see block 0. well, it's about 59, so the difference is 1/10. As I said, when I was taking it apart, I took measurements and I also had a difference. If I remember correctly, it was even 2/10. If I showed the video earlier, I don't know if I still have it or not. So I also checked the bolts and I rejected some of them, 7 in total. They are stretched, you can even see it like this. I don't know how well it's visible on camera, but anyway, they are stretched. So I installed the head, tightened the bolts with the impact wrench, and now I'm going to torque them down. We tighten in 3 stages, first to 100 Newton meters, second to 150, and third by turning 30 to 60 degrees. Well, let's see how it goes. Maybe we'll do 30 degrees on the final turn, maybe 60, we'll see. Well, depending on how the bolts tighten. So now we're tightening to 100 Newton meters. Well, not 100, but 98. Okay, I've tightened it to 100. Now we set the wrench to 150.
100.
So,
104.
look,
Another 10, 150.
well, I'm also checking the gear clearance. Basically, the head won't go any lower, maybe just a few hundredths of a millimeter. And the clearance is just perfect. I mean, everything is fitted, in my opinion, perfectly. Alright, I've tightened everything, checked everything. Now I'll go over them all again in order, without the camera. It's just not as convenient on camera. Sometimes you need to take a closer look, or something else. So I'll check everything again, go through everything in order. Well, and then I give it another 30 to 60 degrees, depending on how it goes. I tighten 2 more bolts in the front here. Well, they're just here, you could say, for support. They don't play a big role, just two 10mm bolts. Well, basically that's it. We'll install the bearings, the camshaft and the rocker arms, adjust the valves. I'm really pleased with the gap in the gear. I was actually thinking about it, worried about what kind of gap we'd get. I was thinking about it, worried about what kind of gap we'd get. Well, you can only find out for sure once everything is assembled. Let me remind you, we took off 0.05 from the head, that's 0.05. And from the block we took off 0.12, so that's a tenth and a bit more. In total we removed 0.17 from both surfaces, 0.17. But our gasket is thicker by 1/10, so in theory we have a 0.07 gap, basically a shortage of space. The size has decreased by 0.07 compared to before. And as we can see, the gap is just perfect. So everything is great. So I'm installing the new camshaft bearings and installing the camshaft. So we see there are only 10 bearings here. You could literally cover them with your palm. But the packaging, there's going to be half a bucket of trash. So first there's one plastic wrap, then each bearing is in a box, and then each one in that box is in another bag. Like I said, half a bucket of trash. Even though, look, it's just a handful. Alright, so I installed the camshaft. Now, how do we set the timing marks? There's a mark on the pulley, and there's also a mark on the cover, so you align them. This is a common rail engine, so there are only 2 marks here. If the engine has a mechanical fuel pump, there are a lot of marks on this cover for setting the injection timing. Here we have a common rail, just 1 mark, so we've aligned it, and the camshaft is being installed. So there's a mark on one tooth, the letter V, and it should be exactly level with the cylinder head like this. That means this tooth should be level with the cylinder head. And there's one thing to keep in mind. If I lift the camshaft now and turn the engine one full rotation, 360 degrees, I won't be able to set the camshaft in this position anymore. The letter V will either be lower or higher. I didn't get it right away. I thought, why is that? It either goes higher or lower. So we've only got one tooth of leeway to move it over. There. Then I removed the camshaft, turned the engine one full rotation, 360 degrees, and my mark lined up. So as we can see, everything is precise. That's how it's done. The tooth, well, the tooth should be exactly along this plane, as we can see. Next, I install these 3 covers, and then I install these valve bridges. I lubricate this rod with assembly paste. This is what the bridge looks like. So this is how it is installed. And first you need to adjust this screw. So how is it adjusted? You just loosen this screw. Loosen the lock nut, back the screw out, and then tighten it all the way. Then turn it just a bit more, about 30 degrees, and lock it with the lock nut. This is so we don't get any misalignment like this. For example, this one is touching, but here there's some clearance here. Or this side is pressing while this side is hanging free, and it will constantly into one side. There will be a misalignment. So first you need to adjust all these screws, and then the pads are installed here. After that, the rocker arm is installed, and this same rocker arm serves as both the first and last support for the camshaft. So I install everything and tighten it all up. I adjust the valves, then I install the injectors. Well, and now I can close the cover. Well, and then next, for example, I need to install the water pump, the thermostat, and the manifold. Well, in general, I sat down, looked at it, and tried to figure out why I have this situation with the mark. That is, in one position it matches, in another position it doesn't match. Well, basically, it all comes down to the number of intermediate gears here. When I was installing the crankshaft in the first intermediate gear, this gear block, a 111, and on the largest gear there's a mark 2 ones, and on the crankshaft there's also a mark L, I think. It turns out that the big gear has twice as many teeth as the gear on the crankshaft, and it's important that these marks line up exactly. That's an important point. So if I make one turn of the engine, this mark will also come up. There will be top dead center for the cylinders. The first and fourth cylinders will be at top dead center, but on these 2 gears the marks won't line up. The mark on the crankshaft will come back to the same place, but on the big gear the mark will move by 180 degrees. That's the whole nuance. So I make another turn. On the big gear the mark comes back to the crankshaft again. The mark on the crankshaft also lines up. There on the pulley our mark lines up through this system of intermediate gears, only in this position will the camshaft be set correctly. That is, this mark will line up correctly. V. There. That's a nuance. I didn't know about it. I just looked at all this now. I dug into it, learned about it, and figured it out. For example, on a Volvo D12 engine, it has about the same system. You also set the mark on the crankshaft. It's just that it's here, well, in the inspection window near the flywheel, near the oil pan. And on the camshaft, you also set the mark there. Right, there are also a lot of intermediate gears there, but it's not like that there. So in any case, that mark will line up there. But specifically with this engine for HK1, it turns out there's this nuance, yeah. Okay, so I'm adjusting the bridges. Now I'll adjust the first, second, third, and sixth. So, when I had the first cylinder at top dead center on the compression stroke, now I turned it 1 revolution. Well, that's so they're not clamped. I could have done all this without the rocker arms, but I've already installed everything, so that's why. So now I'm adjusting the 4th, 5th, and 7th, 8th. I'm loosening the lock nut. There, I've loosened it. I've unscrewed it a little. And now... So, I'm holding it with my hand and unscrewing the adjustment screw. And now, look, I'm turning it, and here I have contact. There, contact. And I literally turn it just 1 flat. There. And I lock it in place. That's it. This one is adjusted. I mark it for myself right away. Next, continuing. Again, loosen the nut and the lock nut. Hold the screw. Also, tighten it. Unscrew it completely and slowly, gradually. There, I'm tightening, turning it. I can feel it touching. And I make just a slight additional turn. Then I lock it with the lock nut. That's it. The bridge is adjusted. Now I'll adjust the valves. I turn it another 360 degrees. So the first cylinder is at top dead center on the compression stroke, and the 4th cylinder has valve overlap. And all the timing marks should line up, all the marks on the pulley and the mark on the camshaft. The mark on the pulley is lined up, the mark on the camshaft is lined up, 1st cylinder, top dead center. So on compression I adjust the 1st, 2nd, 3rd and 4th. Skip the 5th and adjust the 6th. Then I turn it 360 degrees. And the remaining valves are the 4th, 5th, 7th and 8th. So I adjust both the intake and exhaust valves with a 0.4 filler gauge. And the adjustment here is as simple as possible. We loosen the lock nuts. Insert the filler gauge between the tappet and the adjustment screw like this. I loosened it and now it's free. Now, with a little resistance, it starts to move, and then we tighten the lock nut. Also, I saw on the internet that you shouldn't tighten this nut too much, meaning if you tighten it too hard, the aluminum rocker arm cracks along the threads like this. I don't know, I don't have any experience myself, but let's take people's word for it. That's it, the valve is adjusted. We can see that the 0.4 filler gauge slides through with some resistance. Next one. Basically, it hardly needs any adjustment. That's it, the first and second are adjusted, and so on. I adjust all the valves and then I'll install the injectors. Basically, I was working without the camera. I installed all these tubes, put one in a bit earlier than the next one. They don't fit easily, so I had to remove and install everything several times. I spent a few hours on it, probably about 5 hours. Now it's 11 p.m. on Sunday. I planned to finish everything today, but I still need to paint it, and I haven't installed the pump yet. There's still work to do with the pump. The flanges are different, the threads are different, and the holes are different diameters. Here it's 8, here it's 10, here it's 4, here it's 6. So I need to swap the flanges around. I won't be installing the thermostats. The client will install the thermostats himself. These rubber seals, I don't know, they're all worn out. It's up to him if he wants to put in new ones or use these. So I'll just send all of this. There are also plugs here that need to be installed on the EGR system. Everything here is blocked off. Exhaust gases don't get in here. There's a plug here and there's a plug here too. The coolant just passes through it. The coolant just flows around the tubes. Just that. But inside there's nothing here. So it's just a plug like this. Keep dirt from getting in. That's all. On one side and on the other. So I still need to close this cover at the back for now. Basically, I was laying out the sensors here. Just put the turbo on for now to figure out how the pipes go, which pipe goes where. This is the oil feed line for the turbocharger. It comes out from the filter here, and it's also attached here. And also we have 2 pipes here. These are the coolant feed and return lines for the turbo. So here's one pipe and here's the second pipe. I've just roughly placed them for now. So what else do I need to do tomorrow? That's enough for today. Install the pump, then remove the turbo. I also need to attach this bracket here, which holds the heat exchanger. Here's another part of that bracket. This is how it attaches here. Attach this bracket, remove the turbo, secure it, and paint it without the turbo. I won't paint the turbine. The customer already says not to paint it at all. If it will be faster, don't paint the engine at all. Send it to me unpainted. But I'll paint the engine anyway. Plus or minus 1 day won't make much of a difference. And I won't do anything with the turbo anymore, especially since we haven't checked it or sent it for repair. So I'll clean it up tomorrow, blow it out, and when the engine is painted and the paint dries, I'll install the turbo. And here, instead, this coolant pipe and this oil supply pipe are installed. I have to do all this tomorrow. And I also want to pack it up tomorrow. Well, I don't know, maybe on Tuesday. The engine will already be on its way to the customer. So the engine is ready. This is the next day, Monday evening, about 9:15, maybe 9:20. So I ended up spending the whole day working on it again with just one break. So I've basically been working on this engine for almost 12 hours today. So what did I do? I painted it. There were some shots. I filmed something. And I also installed the turbo. As I said, I wasn't going to paint the turbo, and it wasn't even checked. So I cleaned it, blew it out, installed it, installed the coolant supply pipe, the oil supply pipe, and the oil drain line. When I was disassembling the engine here, I tried to unscrew this one, and well, I broke this stud. Well, I didn't want to leave it like that, so I took it apart, tapped it out, soaked the nuts, screwed them, and also unscrewed this broken stud. By the way, I'll even show you what it looks like. Here, this is what it looks like. So I kept tapping and tapping, and somehow I managed to unscrew it too. So I installed another stud, put in new gaskets, tightened it up. This stud here was broken. I didn't break it. That's how it came to me. I'm not touching it anymore. They'll figure it out themselves on the spot. Basically, there's a thread here, the nut will screw on. Now I'm going to pack it up. The coat. I'll definitely cover these air channels, the intake manifold, this breather, then the turbo, and then I'll wrap it in stretch film. Put it on the pallet, brace it. So I definitely need to pack it today because the truck is leaving tomorrow morning, but packing will still take me another hour, maybe an hour and a half or two. I'll work without the camera now so I can get it all done faster. So that's the situation. That's the kind of repair. That's the kind of client. He wants it done quickly, done well and cheaply. But unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. Or at least I can't do it that way. So the repair of this engine cost this much. That's the total, as usual, my work and the work of third-party organizations. They did the pressure testing, the head work, machining, inspection, fuel system, basically all the work and also all the spare parts. So that's how the video turned out. Thanks everyone for watching. Good luck to everyone and goodbye. So now I have a different engine in for repairs. D2876 F12. But now I want to make a little note about the 4HK1. Probably at the end of the video it will be why has it taken so long for the 4HK1 assembly series to come out? Well, because I just don't know another word for it. Probably can't find one. It's just a complete mess. I'll try to explain it briefly in a couple of words. Well, first of all, here's the main thing. When I was editing the engine assembly series, there were 3 evenings, each about 2.5 hours long. And I had about 30 minutes edited, so I started editing further. And then everything just disappeared. White screen appeared, so I tried to recover everything, but I just couldn't do it. So basically I saved the film. There was still a few hours, about 3 or 4 hours of unedited material that I saved. And in the end, I was left with only about 13 minutes, 12 something. That's exactly the material I edited on the first day. After that, it's just a white screen. So basically, I just lost the second and third day. I mean, I lost about 2 evenings, about 2.5 hours of work each. I just lost them. That completely threw me off track. I mean, it finished me off, you could say, because with this engine, like I said, it's just a total mess. Even with editing in the 10 years of the channel's existence, I've never had anything like this happen where I lost an edited video. Not once has that happened to me. This is the first time, and that's it. The whole thing from start to finish, the entire repair, It's filled with this kind of, I don't know, nonsense. So, in a nutshell, here's what happened. I sent the engine to the customer, painted it, packed it, shipped it, and the customer basically calls me. At first, he sent a video showing that there's some diesel leaking somewhere, like some washer isn't holding, a bolt isn't tightened, but that's minor stuff. That can all be taken care of on site when the engine is being installed. And then, on my birthday, he calls me and says they started the engine, but oil is getting into the coolant, and coolant is getting into the oil. So, what are we going to do? Why did you assemble the engine poorly? Well, my first thought is that it's the heat exchanger. I even mentioned in the video when I was assembling the engine that there are problems with the heat exchanger here. As I remember, it was completely clogged both inside and outside. My first thought was, well, when I was cleaning it with that knife, I was poking around in there. So my first thought was that it was the heat exchanger. So it turns out it's kind of my fault. So I told him, go ahead and buy a heat exchanger. I'll send you the money for it. Since that's how it happened, it's my mistake. So what does the customer do? He removes the engine again because on the excavator there's no access to the heat exchanger. There, well, basically everything is close together. Like, let's say here's the heat exchanger and right here is the frame or something else. So he removes this engine and buys a new heat exchanger again. He sends me a handwritten receipt, and it says that the heat exchanger costs 28,600. Well, I mean, I don't know, you can buy that radiator grill for 12. All right, that's not the point. So it comes out to 28,000, well, let's say roughly 30,000. Alexander and I, well, my partner who helps me with the engine installation for supplies, we each chip in 15,000, transfer it to Riemann for the heat exchanger. That's it. I think that finally, that's the end of it. Some time passes. I don't know, maybe a few days, like 3, 4, 5, I don't remember. And then Riemann calls me again, writes to me saying that they installed a new heat exchanger and nothing changed. It's still in the oil. I mean, they started up for just a few minutes, and instead of, well, the oil level increases 4 times at least, and they drain 15 liters of coolant. And then there's just this white emulsion. Well, I just can't figure it out. So my first thought is that it's something with the cylinder head. Well, first of all, obviously my thoughts are about mistakes made by third-party organizations because I know my own work. I'm confident in my work, but I'm not confident in the work of third-party organizations, like where the liners were done, where the cylinder head was done. I don't know, we get in touch over video call, and Nariman shows me that they've removed the oil pan. Water is leaking from the oil passage. Water is dripping right out of it. Basically, I can't figure it out. I just have no idea where so much water could be coming from. So, it's coming in instantly, and I start thinking they also have a turbocharger with water cooling. So, both oil lines under pressure and coolant go to the turbocharger. Well, but we didn't do anything with the turbocharger. I mean, we could have put it on a test bench, paid, I don't know, 3,500, maybe 3 or 4. I don't know, give or take. And then we could know for sure if the turbocharger is working or not, what problems it might have. But the customer didn't want to do that. I'm saying that most likely the problem is with the turbocharger. Well, not just most likely, I'm 90% sure that the problem is with the turbocharger. I've already searched all kinds of information on the internet, looked up what possible problems there could be with this engine. So it turns out that everything is ruled out except for the turbocharger. That's it. Bolte. And before that, yes, Nariman had some engine specialist. He brought him over. They took off the oil pan and he said, there's a bump here. Water is leaking from this bump. There's actually a hole here. Bolte. So he said the bolts had punched through the block. I'm just puzzled. I'm thinking, how is that possible? I tighten every bolt. I measure the length. I don't know. I double check everything. I'm thinking, how is that possible? Either there's already something wrong with my head or, well, in general, it's just confusion like this. Yeah, I mean, it's all nerves. This has been going on for more than a week now, maybe even 2 weeks already. I mean, all of this is constantly spinning in my head. Well, I don't know. In general, it's hard to explain. They're showing me that there's a bump on the block, that there's water coming out of some hole. Water is pouring out, even though that's just where the oil filter attaches. There aren't even any water cooling channels or anything like that there. So, well, I see that water is running right out of the oil channel there. That's it. So I have another engine like this in for repair. There's a block over there. So I started looking at that block. This block has also already been through machining. Everything was done there as well. And in general, the machinists we take it to, they've done all this for us more than once. That's it. So I started looking at this block, and that bump there is just a casting. The hole is for oil drainage from the turbo, or rather, not from the turbo, but from the filter. So basically there's nothing there at all. It's just some, I don't know, nonsense made up stuff, whoever came up with all this. So I told Nariman, go ahead and remove the turbo. We need to send it for inspection or install a known good turbo instead. That's it. So Nariman removed the turbo, takes it away, and a few more days pass. He calls me again and shows that he has drops of water coming right from the oil pan. And before that, he told me they put 4 atmospheres of pressure into the radiator and nothing was leaking anywhere. I racked my brain over it too. How is that possible? They put in 4 atmospheres of pressure and nothing leaks anywhere, but as soon as the engine starts turning, running, the turbo starts spinning. In just a few minutes, there are 15 liters of water in the oil. So then they call me to Nariman a few days later after they installed the new turbocharger and show me that the oil pan, the plug is unscrewed. Water is poured in and it's dripping right from the plug. I say, so where is it dripping from? I say, you need to remove the oil pan and take a look. So what happened next? Then we call each other and we argue for several hours on the phone. Well, what do I mean by argue? They try to explain their side to me and I try to explain my side to them. So we agreed that Alexander and I would return the money for the repair of this engine and they would send the engine back to us. So basically it's like we're buying this engine. And I'll also say that the repair of this engine cost 360,000. That's the total amount. My work, all the spare parts, all the machining work, 360,000. So basically for heavy equipment, for an excavator, such a major overhaul costs 360,000. As I said, at the official dealers, just the repair alone costs 220,000 without spare parts. The client started demanding almost 500,000 rubles for it. That is, he included the oil he bought for this engine, the filters. Well, when he started it up, there was water, oil, plus shipping, plus something else. In total, almost 500,000 rubles, 500,000. Although he transferred to us only 360,000 in total. So I don't know, we spent several hours proving all this to each other. In the end, we agreed that we would transfer him 400,000 rubles. He sends it, he already found some other engine there. Obviously his excavator is just sitting there and the first month of summer is already over for us. That's it. So basically we transfer him the money. He buys the engine, installs it, and then he sends us that engine. And here on site, we start figuring out what's wrong, why it's not working. Either it's my mistake, or it's a mistake by the person who worked on the block, or a mistake by the person who did the heads, or rather the head. So we send the money, and then about, 3, 4, 5 days go by, maybe 6. Well, actually, this whole saga lasted probably a month, if not longer. Yeah, about 5 or 6 days go by, and basically he calls me about the repair one morning. I think, well, maybe he wants to discuss something, like how to send the engine and so on. He calls about the repair, tells me that's it, the tractor is fixed. I say, well, okay, you installed the engine. I thought he bought that engine, installed it, started it up, everything works, the tractor is ready, but he's not ready to send this engine that I worked on. He says, no, they fixed the original engine, the one I worked on. I said, what happened? There was a tube connected incorrectly, it was mixed up. That's it. Well, in general, I didn't get into which tube was connected incorrectly or what was mixed up, although I had mentioned it about 3 times over the phone before, saying check all the tubes, something is mixed up somewhere. It can't be that water is getting into the oil in such large amounts. For the job, I received 85,000. 65,000 was transferred to me by Riemann, and 20,000 was transferred to me by my previous client through whom Riemann contacted me. For the job, I received 85,000 for that engine. Out of that, I gave 25,000 to the director for renting the workshop, and I transferred 15,000 back to Riemann for the heat exchanger, so that already puts us at minus 40,000. So, all this work, all this engine repair, all of it, all this stress, a month of this hassle, a month of nerves when I couldn't sleep at night, all of that, for all of it, I got 45,000 rubles. So that's the result. It's not my fault. And it's not the fault of any third-party organizations in the repair of the block or the head. The client is at fault because they connected something incorrectly somewhere. Well, maybe I think the problem was just with the pipe. Well, because when I was looking into it, I went over everything in my head. I went through a ton of information online, and it could only have been the turbo in the cartridge. Well, there's oil pressure and coolant right next to it. In general, I think the problem was just with the turbo. If the customer had just taken the turbo from us right away, taken it for inspection, I hadn't minded spending 3,500 rubles, none of this would have happened. We would have immediately seen that there was a defect in the turbo, installed a new one or repaired it, and that's it. And I wouldn't have had a month of stress, he wouldn't have had downtime. I don't know how many times he removed and installed that engine, maybe 3 or 4 times. He wouldn't have had those extra financial losses. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he lost 100 or 200,000. I don't know how much he lost. I lost money. I lost a lot of nerves. And in the end, in my opinion, the problem was with the turbocharger, although according to the customer, there were some mixed up tubes. Fine, let's say the tubes were mixed up tubes. But the most important thing is that I am not at fault for this repair, for this mistake. It's not my fault. That's it, that's how it is.